So we planted this orchard in 2016, spring of 2016. So this is just a little over 2 years now. So we're just starting to get some good fruit on there. And early in the year, we could tell that we were going to do really good with peaches this year. And our peach trees just loaded up with peaches. And we've got peaches. You can see that they're just all over this tree. So one of the problems that happened is there was so much weight on this tree, and the main limbs lean that direction anyway, that it actually started to lean the entire trunk portion of the tree over. So we had to brace this tree up and try to straighten it up. So we just used some old garden hose and put some electric fence wire around it. We used a couple T-posts here, and then we just twisted this wire and just kept on twisting and tightening it until it finally just kind of pulled that tree back into place. And we just tried to get this lower, the very bottom of the tree, tried to get that trunk pretty well straight up and down, and it's a lot better than it was. One of the other issues is we had so much fruit on these trees, we had to prop up some of the limbs. So we just went and cut some old, these are some sassafras trees, just cut some little sassafras trees down, kind of cut them to length, and propped up some of the limbs to help take the weight off, because there's just so many peaches on these trees. This here is a Red Haven peach tree, and most of the peaches are already gone off of this tree. In fact, I'm planning on taking the rest of the peaches probably off this tree today. So they're all completely ripe and ready to come off. And there was probably only about a third or less of the peaches on this tree. The white peaches had way more peaches. So if we look at the bottom of this peach tree, you can see where all the peaches have fallen off and they've been eaten by either the coons or the squirrels or something. And I think they've actually been stealing some of the peaches, because over the last few days there's actually less peaches than there was earlier this week. So I gotta get these harvested today, or else they're just gonna all disappear. So here's our other white peach tree. These are Bella Georgia, I believe, white peaches. And you can see, same issue. We've got a ton of peaches on this tree. It's just weighing it down, and we've had to prop the limb up on this tree to help keep it from snapping. Now these white peaches ain't 100% ready to be picked yet. They're still green on this peach. So what we're waiting for on these is we're waiting for that green should turn more of a white. So we'll have more of a red and a white. And so I think there's still a couple more weeks on the white peaches. So we do have 2 sweet cherry trees here, and we have one that's a Royal Rainier and one that's a Van cherry tree. And this is the Van cherry tree. It had died the first year, so we replaced it last year, and this one has just sprung up really well. The only problem we have is the Japanese beetles just love these cherry trees, and they eat the leaves really badly. So I was able to actually spray, used an insecticide spray actually one time this summer, and it really did help. You can see where all the dead, leaves completely gone, and then after I sprayed, all these new leaves formed at the top. So it was able to keep growing and grow more leaves, and it definitely did help keep the Japanese beetles off the trees, because they really ate them up bad. So most of my orchard is actually, there's 18 trees that we planted here, and most of them are apples. I think we've got about 7 different varieties of apples spread around here. And most of them have some kind of a blight or a rust happening to them. So if you look at the leaves, you'll see spots on the leaves, and I'm not sure, we may have more than one thing happening here. So sometimes we've got some browning of the tips of the leaves. Some have some more of a spot that's spreading out on the leaves. You see this leaf back here is kind of turning yellow. Also get some spots where the leaves just start kind of curling up. So we got some fungal problems going on. That's what causes all these rusts and blights to the trees, and that does actually kind of spread to the apple as well. So way I understand it is, I mean, it ends up kind of more affecting the skin of the apple, so then it makes really ugly apples. So one thing that we did notice is we got apples on our trees that we didn't have on trees last year, and then the trees that don't have apples, a lot of times we had apples on them last year. So after doing a lot of reading and stuff about this, I guess if you have trouble with blights, you know, and rusts and stuff, that will affect your crop next year. So it seems like I really need to try to do better of a spraying. I need some kind of a routine spraying of the apple trees to try to keep this from happening to the tree, and I should get a better crop of apples, and I should probably get a better looking crop of apples, you know, from the trees instead of these ugly looking ones. So the apples not doing real good. Most trees only have like maybe 3 apples on them, if the, you know, 3 to 7 apples probably on a tree, and then half the trees don't have any apples at all. So I've got 2 pear trees in this in our little orchard here, and one of them is a Bartlett pear, and both of these, actually both pear trees, got scraped by deer last year. So they don't look real good. You can see the bark is all dry and scraped away, and but the tree, you know, came back pretty healthy. The problem is with this Bartlett pear is everything wanted to go completely straight up. So this limb right here is a good example. It just turns and it goes straight up with the main trunk. So you end up with a column of limbs, and the tree doesn't spread out at all. So what we've done is we've tried to teach the limbs and try, you know, stretch them down so that they grow at an angle. So we've already done this limb here, and we just held it down for about 2 months, and with some bungee cords, and then now it's naturally growing outwards. So now we're doing the rest of the limbs, and so we've got 3 more limbs kind of tied down. We'll let them sit there for a couple months, and then we'll let them go, and then hopefully this tree will have a little bit of a natural spread to it, and I'm hoping that it'll grow outward. So I planted 2 plum trees here. One was a Ozark Premier, I believe that's what this tree is, and the other one is a Santa Rosa plum. And this tree's always not looked real good, always had a lot of bug problems, but if you look at it, ended up dying this year. It only got a few leaves and ended up dying. But if you look here at the bark, you can see how this is all split open. It all looks nasty. I think that's some kind of a scab or canker or something like that. Some kind of a goes back to some kind of a fungal disease, I believe, in the tree, and it's just all over the limb. So I really need to dig this tree out, get it out of here, and then next year I'll replant it. I think this kind of still goes back to some type of a routine spraying program. I think certain fruit trees are definitely more susceptible to issues, the apples especially, and then hopefully if I can do that, I can maybe keep this from happening. And the second question was, well, when this started happening, maybe I should have just pruned that whole limb off and kept it from spreading to the rest of the tree. And I think over time maybe I'll learn some of the tricks to the trade of this, but I'm finding that some fruit trees are easier than others. So this fruit tree right here, this is a nectarine. We planted 1 nectarine tree just to see how that tree would do and what the fruit would be like. It is very similar to a peach. The leaves look like a peach. In fact, the fruit actually looks like a peach. We have a couple of nectarines on this tree this year, first time it's set fruit, but they don't look good at all. So we got one here, and there's one back there, and this tree has been the best growing this year. It has just shot up this year, and it is taller than the rest of the trees out here, and it's the fullest probably of all of them. So really surprised the nectarine tree really looks pretty good this year. Probably end up having a lot more fruit next year off of it. What are you doing? You're gonna knock my apple out of the tree. That apple ain't ready to come out yet. So on the side of the orchard over here, we ended up the next year, 2017, we put a bunch of berry plants out here. So this first little box here was blueberries, and without being able to keep this area up and free of weeds, the grass got like 2 foot tall in there, and it shaded out the blueberries. And actually, I only have one blueberry plant in here that is alive, and you can see how small they are. And this was a transplant, and it just didn't survive. I think that the bed is too dry, and I should have just planted these in the ground. So I'll probably just transplant the blueberry into the ground and grow it more like a bush where I can mow around it. So this will probably be something different next year, and I'll probably take that blueberry out and probably buy some more and plant them somewhere else. Now this next bed over here, this is red raspberries. So these are heritage red raspberries, and they put on fruit twice a year. So if you look, you can see that there's fruit forming already. So our fall crop is already coming on. So we've got berries forming at the ends of all of these plants. So, and there's a lot more of the canes now than there was in the spring. So we ought to have a nice little bit of raspberries here in the fall off of these plants. So these things taste like candy coming off the vine. They're really, or off the cane, they're really good. Seems like when you put them in the refrigerator, they start to get more tart, but they're really good fresh. Over here is our blackberries. We transplanted these from town. We transplanted a ton of them, and probably maybe actually only 10% probably survived. So we only had like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 canes that really survived, and then you can see that they've already spread out and it's already coming back pretty good. So next year it'll even be fuller with new canes next year. So all we're trying to do here with these raised beds is just basically try to keep them somewhat contained, and then any of them that start spreading out here, we're just going to mow off, and then you know, just try to keep what grows in this section, because they will end up spreading out of the bed. And we got space here for more raised beds that we haven't done anything with, and then we've got strawberries down here. So the idea was to have June bearing strawberries and then ever bearing strawberries, and that didn't really work out real well. I haven't been able to irrigate this or, you know, keep it a drip water system on it or nothing, so I actually did not get a single strawberry out of this bed in June. I think we were at a really dry time, and it just didn't really work out. So I'm not real happy with the strawberries. And then on this bed, it was supposed to be 2 ever bearing varieties, and I planted one on one side and another on this side over here, and really only one of those varieties is actually ever bearing. So only 1/2 of this has been producing strawberries, and we do have strawberries in here. I think if we look around, you know, you can see some forming, and you know, we've got different strawberries growing in here on this end. But that end I've never really got strawberries off of. I do have a few of these spreading in that direction, but so really disappointed. I think next time when I plant strawberries, I will just do 1 variety per bed in case they give me the wrong thing, because I'm really sure they gave me a June bearing instead of an ever bearing on that end. So next year I think I'll actually probably just go all ever bearing strawberries, and then I'll probably just pull this whole bed up to start with and replant that in an ever bearing variety, and then maybe the following year I'll readdress this bed and maybe try to pull some of the plants out and try to get that down to 1 variety. So when we planted all the apple trees, we picked a couple varieties that my wife really likes. So there's a Fuji and there's a couple Galas, and those would be the apples that she would buy in the store. So then we ended up picking a couple pie varieties, and we picked a couple of other varieties just to see which ones did well, and pretty much not really impressed with any of them right now. So I think they all kind of share the same kind of problem with getting blight or rust or some kind of fungal problem on their leaves. So I mean, the one behind me right here, this is a Liberty tree, And I think the Liberty is supposed to be somewhat disease resistant to some things. And I've got leaves curling, I've got leaves turning brown. It just, I mean, maybe, I think it's actually probably less than the other trees, but I still have that problem. So hopefully, I really don't think there's a variety that's just a fix-all answer to make an apple an easy tree to grow and be able to produce fruit. I think you can grow an apple tree, but to get it to actually produce good amounts of fruit, I think that's going to be a problem. That's going to be where the trick is. Well, I thought maybe I'd just give you a short walkthrough, you know, of how the orchard is doing. I think it's pretty obvious that the only thing I'm really getting any fruit off is the peach trees. The apple trees are not doing very well at all. Just a few apples here and there, not enough to really even make like a batch of applesauce or anything like that off of. So really need to get a better spraying program in place and try to see if I can get that under control. From everything I can tell, that's the only way to really kind of guarantee that you're going to get any kind of apples, is just be able to try to keep all the different diseases that apples are prone to and try to get them under control. So out of all these trees, I'll say that there's at least two varieties that I think are the healthiest looking trees, maybe three varieties that are the healthiest looking. So one is pears. Even though they got scraped by the deer, they came back real healthy. When you look at the leaves of the pears, they are very, very healthy looking leaves and trees and limbs, and they seem to grow pretty good. Haven't got any fruit off of them yet, so I'm not sure how many years it'll take to be able to get some fruit off of them. I've got two different varieties of pears, so I'm just waiting for them to finally get old enough to produce. Next one will be peaches. The peaches are just, I've had peaches every year since even the first year I planted them, which they were decent sized trees when I planted them, but so the peaches have been very happy with the peaches. My wife loves peaches, and fresh, she loves to eat them right off there. The white ones are her preference. And I'd say out of all these trees, that the next one that's the healthiest just on its own without having to do anything has got to be the nectarine tree, which is kind of a, you know, I've never really thought, it was just a trial experiment to even plant that tree, and it's done really well. It's a self-pollinating tree, so we only had to plant one. So I think them are the three varieties that I think are the easiest to maintain. And then definitely the cherry trees, sweet cherries. We did get some early this year, but I think the birds got them, or they fell off before we got a chance to get any off of it. And then, I mean, the apples are just, they're troublesome, you know. So those are the varieties that seem to be tougher. So, but that's how the orchard's doing. I really think in a few years we'll really have these trees, they'll be like 5 years old, and they'll really start producing, and we'll actually finally get to save a lot of fruit off of these trees. It just takes time. So that's the orchard. That's how it's doing. Thanks for watching. You're tearing my tree up. Yes, you are tearing my tree up. It's bad enough as it is. Now that's actually a really good looking peach.